Hello, my name is Paulette Downey, and this is a message from God. This is a message that God has been speaking to me on for quite a while, actually, over a year. He's wanted me to talk on this. But right now it's coming up as something that he wants me to talk on now. And it is basically, it's going to be a 3-week series that I'm going to be giving on self-care is not selfish care. Body, mind, and soul. Or I should say, body, mind as in soul, and spirit. So it's going to be a 3-week series that I am going to be speaking on that self-care is not selfish care. And it's going to be talking about the physical, it's going to be talking about the soul as well as the spiritual. So I'm going to start off this particular message for this segment is going to be on something that I'm very comfortable speaking on, and that is on the body. So it's going to be physical. And so I have broken it down. And so what I'm going to start off with is something that I am very comfortable with, and that is beauty. And so caring for ourselves at a skin deep level, a lot of people think of that as vain. Or like vanity caught up in it, and essentially yes, that like depending if we place that first and if we make that our god, then it is vanity and it is actually making it your god. So God just wants us to care for ourselves in all the areas that I mentioned, physically, you know at a soul level, with our minds as well as spiritually. So he does want us to care for ourselves at all these levels. And there is mention of it in the Bible. I'm going to go into that momentarily. But I'm focused here on the physical. And so a lot of people, including a lot of people who are followers, tend to think that caring for yourself at the physical level is vanity, and it is not something that God wants us to do, and it is not Christian-like, and that is simply untrue. God wants us to care for ourselves at this level, and in fact, it is very important to him. Before I go into, talking about, beauty and talking about just how we're supposed to care for ourselves at the physical level, I am going to go into scripture. And I'm going to talk about something from the Old Testament. So God talks about, caring for ourselves right from the beginning. And so I'm going to, go to Leviticus. And this is 15. And actually, this is a very lengthy piece. So I'm not going to go into all of it. So anyway, it starts off with bodily discharge. So it's chapter 15. I am going to skip a lot of it. I am going to start off with verse 5, and then I'm going to go down. Just in the reason why I'm doing this, even though it's kind of lengthy, I just want you to get a gist of the importance God places on cleanliness. So I'm going to start off at 5, and it talks about bodily discharge, and more specifically about the discharge of a man when he discharges. So I'm starting off. So if you touch the man's bed, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If you sit where the man with the discharge has sat, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If you touch the man with the discharge, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If the man spits on you, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. Any saddle blanket on which the man rides will be ceremonially unclean. If you touch anything that was under the man, you will be unclean until evening. You must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water. and you will remain unclean until evening. If the man touches you without first rinsing his hands, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. Any clay pot the man touches must be broken. Any wooden utensil he touches must be rinsed with water. So that is just to give you a gist of the importance that God places on cleanliness. And I mean, that was back then. We should be very thankful right now because of Jesus that we do not have to, that we are not required to actually act out those steps if we touch someone who is unclean in any way. But the main gist I want to get from this is the importance of cleanliness and the importance that God places on hygiene and on being clean and on caring for ourselves. So with that being said, and the reason why this is because if we do not care for ourselves at this physical level, we endanger ourselves of becoming sick. We endanger ourselves of becoming unhealthy. So it's not just a matter of this person, a person who is unclean, we touch them and then it's cooties, so to speak. But it's just the importance of like what it can like the effects and what will happen as a result of us being unclean. So this is just a perfect example of what will happen to a person if we are unclean. So caring for ourselves at a physical level is very, very important. And so things like I said, like taking care of yourself at a beauty level, washing your face, twice daily, showering. Once daily, twice daily would be the preference. Making sure that the clothing that we are wearing are clean, that are always cleaned, and that are always washed. These are important things, and it is important. At the same time, we don't want to make these our gods. And so this is the case in a lot of cases. What happens is when we place things like external beauty, and we place it, we make it our God, and we say that, and people do it to feel good about themselves, but to feel good, to feel like they feel like this is who I am. I am about makeup. I am about hair. I am about how I look physically. When we make these things in beauty about who we are, then it is becoming a sin. So God is always supposed to be central. So God is central in our lives, and then after God being central, then of course he wants us to care for ourselves. So talking about beauty, talking about like things like skincare, it is important, like I said, that we do cleanse our face, that we do cleanse our bodies. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with us in investing in great skincare for our face and taking care of our skin, on a daily basis. And so, what would that look like to you? There is nothing, like I said, investing good money. If you are unable to invest the type of money or the kind of money that you feel that you need in order to look good, I mean, there's always ways around these things. Maybe investing, maybe taking like a product, like say for example, I would recommend a serum, which would be probably the best thing to actually invest in and save, like put a little bit more money into purchasing something that's a little more expensive. And because the serum penetrates deeply into the skin, helping it to do whatever it is targeted to do for your skin. And then maybe buying, like other skincare products, like, moisturizers and toners and eye cream that are a little less expensive. Things like a sunscreen also very important, probably the most important thing that you are going to need to help, to starve off a premature aging. But taking care of how we look physically and how we show up in the world is very, very important. And while we should not judge people on, their appearance and how they care for themselves. At the same time, people do take into account, like we do judge people on, the first few seconds of when we see them, and it is important. We shouldn't judge people like character wise. We shouldn't judge people on their character as to how they appear, but at the same time, we should be showing up being the best version of ourselves. And that's what God wants. He wants us to show up as the best version of ourselves. And clearly, and I mean, this is throughout the Bible, where cleanliness is very important to God, and caring for ourselves at a physical level is very important. Because if you let yourself go at a physical level. So if you're not caring for yourself at a physical level, if you're not caring for your skin, then that is going to actually penetrate into how you think about yourself. So letting yourself go physically, then it does seep into the soul, and then it does seep into the spirit. And yes, I do know that there are some Christians who don't believe. They believe that they are saints, because they don't believe, they are not into wearing makeup or spending quality money on, or a good amount of money on quality products. So they do look at that as a way of being a Christian, but that's religious. Like, that's a religious way of thinking. So they are also basing their identity on the fact that they do not spend money on the physical, on makeup, on skincare, on clothing or whatnot. So they are actually, that's actually a god. Like, that's actually a god in itself. If you're looking at yourself as being a Christian and being righteous, because you don't wear makeup or you don't spend money on skincare or anything that pertains to the physicalities of your appearance, then that is you placing your appearance as as making it as a god, and actually placing how you look as, how can I put it, just the same as, say, someone who is into their looks and into how they appear. It's the same thing, but reverse. So for someone who places their value in how they look, with respect to the amount of money they spend on their hair, the amount of money they spend on their skincare, and they pour all this money into how they appear physically, and as a result, identify themselves as who they are, wrapped up in how, and wrapped up in the monies that they spend on themselves. It's the same thing in reverse. It's the exact same thing in reverse. If you're not spending a penny on yourself, or if you're spending limited money on, your physical care, and you feel that that makes you who you are as a Christian, then you are placing that identity of how you look physically and how you spend your money and how you care for yourself. You've actually placed that as a god, and that actually is a form of religion. That is not a relationship with God. That is not being a follower of Jesus Christ, and in no way where in the Bible is that saying that, like, you're going to enter heaven because you don't wear makeup and you don't care for your skin, or you don't care for yourself at a physical level. So this has nothing to do with salvation. How you appear and be it all dolled up or be it plain Jane, neither of these have anything to do with your salvation and you getting into heaven. Neither one of them will get you into heaven. And in fact, depending, it could even hinder you from getting into heaven if you're making this your God. So the importance is about actually caring for yourself, which God does want us to do. And there's nothing wrong, like I said, with investing in yourself, investing in how we look, and from a like purely beauty point, like spending money on skincare, spending money on say like perfumes and makeup. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you don't have the money, I understand. Not everyone can spend. Some of us have budgets. Some of us have, very little budget. And so within your means, of course, and this is what I'm saying. So if you have that kind of budget, if you have the kind of money where you can spend on makeup and fragrances and skincare, by all means go out, do so. There is nothing wrong about that. There is nothing sinful in doing that. If you're on a budget, well, of course you have to, you can only buy according to what's on your bank account. But still, it is important that you do care for yourself. God wants you to do that, and He doesn't want you to let yourself go at the same time. And He doesn't. Also, there's no excuse if you have a limited budget. So if you have a limited budget, but you do have enough in which you can invest on your appearance, then by all means do so. And obviously, if it's a limited budget, there's only so much you can spend. So if you're not working, for example, if you don't have a job and you have limited funds, well, you can only invest in with that in which you have. Whereas someone who is working and depending on what their income is, they may be able to spend more to care for themselves at that physical level. So again, it's not about competing with others. It's not about trying to look like the Barbie doll who lives next door to you, who who is into the latest. The latest skincare, the latest, all the makeup that's coming out and all the fragrances. It's not about you keeping up with other people, but it's about you knowing yourself, understanding what works for you, and just shaping your beauty your beauty routine to that which you are able to afford to buy and which suits you. So it's not about you looking to your right and looking to your left and seeing what the latest thing is or who's wearing it or what anyone else is doing, but it's about self-care. And it's not selfish. And so this is the thing. It's not selfish. Self-care is not selfish. And this, by caring for yourself at this exterior level, helps you to feel good about who you are. Again, it's not a vanity thing. It's not about vanity. It's about actually being comfortable with who you are in your own skin. And one of the best ways to start caring about yourself is at a physical level. And so this is about caring for yourself and making yourself feel good. And like I said, cleansing and using the right body lotions are body lotions that you can afford to help you feel good about who you are and how you show up. Because how you feel about yourself is how other people are going to see you. And so if you show up and you're not feeling good about how you look, it does show. It really does come off. People really do receive that. And so God wants us to feel good about ourselves at a physical level. I mean, I know that for a fact, that He does want us, and I'll get more into it later when I go into the other areas of, the physical aspect of caring for ourselves. But beauty with skincare, makeup, and fragrance is a very important way to start caring for ourselves and helping ourselves to feel better about ourselves and our hygiene as well, cleansing twice a day, once a day. Once a day is fine, twice a day is better. Washing our face twice a day, both men and women. Keeping our clothes clean as well, like keeping ourselves clean daily, our washing our clothes on a regular basis, as the Bible, talks about as well. And so this is the start of how we can feel good about ourselves. And it's not selfish. It is not at all selfish to care for ourselves at this level. It only becomes selfish when we start showing up, when we start relying on these things to identify ourselves. Like we identify ourselves with these things. So we show we remove who we are, personality, and we remove personality from people, and we think that the physical appearance is who we are and who people are. So when we start to discriminate against people who may not wear as much makeup as we do, or may not have certain hairstyles as we do, or may not wear the fragrances that we do or the clothing that we do, then there is a problem with that. That is the problem, is when we make it our God. So if we are doing it to care for ourselves, but not relying on it as a way to make ourselves feel good, from a point of view of self-esteem. When this becomes our self-esteem, when this becomes our identity, then when that's taken away from us, who are we? So it is important to care for ourselves, but caring for ourselves in like hygiene and how we show up and feeling good, but not making beauty our identity and the identity of other people, because then it does become skin deep. It becomes skin deep when we start to judge other people and say things like, okay, like this person's hair is like this, or this person doesn't wear a lot of makeup, or this person is very plain and minimal, therefore they're not attractive, or they're not it, or they're not cool. Then this becomes very skin deep and it becomes very superficial. And this is not Christ-like. This is not what God is asking us to be. He wants us to care for ourselves because he wants us, as he mentioned in the Bible, to keep ourselves, how can I put it, to keep ourselves clean, to keep ourselves, from getting any kind of sicknesses, getting any kind of diseases. I'm trying to think, I believe it was in the 17th century. I want to say it was in the 17th century or in the 18th century when soap was discovered. So up until that point, and it was a doctor who actually discovered it. Up to that point, it was just people cleansing themselves with water. And so people were dying, not knowing why they were dying. Also, not only with that, a lot, when surgeries were done in hospitals, they were using the same, like after they did one surgery, then they would do the next surgery using the same utensil, not cleaning the utensil. And as a result, so many people were dying and they didn't know why this was happening. So when cleansing came into the mix and when soap came into the mix, the deaths became less. The mortality rate of people became less once soap was involved and once proper cleansing techniques were developed. So this is the importance of keeping ourselves clean and caring for ourselves, because it protects us from sicknesses and disease. Now, I talked about beauty. Now I'm going to also talk about clothing, like how we dress, how we show up with the clothing. Not everybody can wear designer clothes. There's absolutely nothing wrong with designer clothes. Personally, I love designer clothing myself. But I can't afford it. I can't afford to buy designer clothing because I don't have that kind of income, as a lot of people out there don't. And designer clothing do not make the individual. So let's be clear here. And this is the trap with fashion. I love fashion. I love fashion. I love designer clothing. But wearing designer clothing does not make you fashionable. Wearing designer clothing means you're spending a certain amount of money on very expensive clothing. Some may look good, some may be whatever, but it doesn't make you fashionable. It doesn't give you style. And of course, we want to show up wearing clothes that are suited for us. So again, like I mentioned with beauty, same goes with fashion. We want to find our own. We want to find our own look, our own signature, something that says who we are. And this takes time. It takes a lot of time. I know for myself, like I've always loved fashion. I've loved fashion since I was a child. I would read all of the I would look at all the catalogs that my mom would get when I was a child. That kind of tells you where I'm at age-wise. But all the catalogs, all the fashion magazines, I would rip out all the, like pages of, from the fashion magazines as well as the catalogs, and say, these are the clothes I'm going to get when I become an adult. And so I've always been into fashion. So I developed, I kind of knew my taste at a very young age. And of course, as I became a young adult, then that continued. And so it's a matter of experimenting and knowing who you are and what works for you. It's not about you, trying to copy the latest celebrity or dress the way this person, the Barbie doll down the street. It's about developing your personal signature and style. So it doesn't have to be designer. Nothing wrong with wearing designer. Probably the best thing you would want to do, if you can afford it, is to have some designer and some not designer. I've found a lot of beautiful clothes out there that are not designer clothing, and they are immaculately made, and just beautiful to wear. And you know what, some of them, they even could look like designer, like to looking at them, they're so beautifully made. So wearing designer clothes does not make you look better than someone who doesn't wear designer clothes. In fact, and this goes both ways. This actually does go both ways. I've seen it go both ways, where people who are wear clothing that are not designer clothing have been knocked off by designers, and then clothing from designers have been knocked off by people who do not have a name, like that brand name in designers. So knockoffs go both ways, and like some of the most, how can I put it? Some of the most signature styles have come from people who had no name. So they were designers with no name, and you have like iconic styles. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with wearing clothing from people who are not designers. But the important thing is developing a sense of a style for yourself, knowing who you are, knowing what your sense of style is, and developing that and expanding that. I am not a designer by any means, but I do know the importance of how you feel and how you show up. Is reliant also on how you dress and how you feel about what it is that you are wearing. And so I'm not saying that you need to have, like closets full, if you do, like I love clothes. It's who I am. But if you're not like that, if you're someone who's more who, just needs a few staple pieces, that's fine. And really and truly, that's all you need. You just need a few staples. But the importance of feeling good about yourself and um, showing up in the world, where, you know, you stand out. And when I say stand out, I'm not talking about, like star or anything like that, but just showing up where people, where people will get a positive impression of you. It begins with your clothes. It also begins with your clothing and choosing clothing that are right for you. So you don't want to look at somebody and say, "Oh my goodness, that looks really nice on them," but your body frame may not be the same body frame as theirs. You may not be the same height as them, so you may not be able to pull off what they're pulling off. So it's important that you know what works for you, because what works for somebody else may not work for you. It's not about you copying what someone else wears. It's about you finding your unique signature in style and dressing, and just going with that. And so how you dress, how you show up, it is important in how you feel about yourself ultimately. And like I said, you don't need to spend, you don't need to spend bundles of money in order to look good. There are plenty of discount stores out there where you can get amazing clothes, and you can get a lot of designer clothes at a lot of these discount places like Marshalls and TG Maxx, and there's so many of them out there where you can get amazing designer clothes out there for bargain basement prices. Yeah, and just just develop your style from places like that. You can even go to like thrift shops. There's so many things that you can do, but of course if you do have the money, by all means do so. But style is personal. It's personal, and it has nothing to do with designer labels. Love designer labels, I really do. I do. But at the same time, I also understand that style does not come from the amount of money that you have on your bank account. It comes from how you put an outfit together. And so you do not need to feel that in order to look good, from how you dress comes from the amount of money that you have on your bank account. It's just a matter of you developing your personal style and being comfortable with that style that you have. And that also shows. But, like caring for yourself with the things that you wear, and how you show up, is self care. Keeping your clothes clean, keeping them, like any kind of, if there's any holes in them, like keeping them just clean and just well kept. All is a part of self-care, and how you show up, and actually how people do see you. And like, this isn't to impress people, but at the same time, you're not doing this to impress people. You're doing this to feel good about yourself and to build upon how you feel on the outside, so that also goes into the inside. But like I said, it's not about people, but at the same time, especially if you're applying for work, or like you're meeting people, we do want to show up in a certain way that doesn't turn people off. But at the same time, you don't want to make clothing who you are and start judging people who do not dress a certain way because they can't afford it, or because they just don't care to dress that way. We don't want it to become a god, because none of this at the end of the day is going to get us into heaven. But none of it is going to get us into heaven. And that's not God's purpose. But He just wants us to show up. He wants us to show up, caring for ourselves on how we look physically. And I know I can speak for myself when, through my homeless, like when I was living on the streets, and like I said, from maybe. And from when I could read a catalog of magazines, I was pouring into those things constantly. And so I never thought it would get to the point where I actually just didn't care about fashion. But, when you're on the streets, when you're living on the streets, I mean, there are far more important things to be concerned about than survival. Far more important things like survival being the most important than fashion. So far more important things than fashion. Survival was far more important than how I looked. And there was a time, when I couldn't even, bathe on a regular basis. So it just got to the point where it was just about survival and just living day to day. So when I did get into the first shelter, I was wearing, like secondhand clothes, nothing wrong with that. I have some secondhand clothes that are staples in my closet right now. I was brought up not wearing secondhand clothes because my mom was brought up wearing secondhand clothes. So she taught us, no, not to wear secondhand clothes. So it was just the irony of the whole thing of me actually now wearing secondhand clothes as a result of my situation. And I really frowned on it. I really looked down on it. Now I don't, but at the time, and I had no other choice. But from that point on, after being in the situation that I was in, and living in the shelter that I was living in, God was speaking to me about like cleaning up my wardrobe, and he said, okay, now I need you to start. Putting yourself together better and, like start to get yourself back on track, start, like investing in a few pieces, making yourself look well, like put together and presentable. And and that was being said to me a few times. God was saying that to me. And even though I knew that this was something that, God cared for, but when he said it like that so many times, I really realized the importance God places on how we care for ourselves physically. This is, like he does care. And this is something that he is very, very concerned with. So, and he actually did place that on my heart. And it felt like I had a lot of money, but what I did is I went to, like bargain places like Target and Marshalls, and I started investing in a few pieces that would make me look put together, and so this is why I say, and this is why I know that these things are important to God. He doesn't care about the price tag. What he cares about is how you come up, how you show up, how you present yourself. And as Christians, we do want to present ourselves in a Christian manner, especially for women. I mean, like I like cleavage. I do, like for myself. I grew up with the rule of usually if one thing is, I'm not talking about exploding, but if there's one thing that you're drawing attention to, then you don't draw attention to the other. So if tension is being drawn to your chest, then there's no, your legs, there shouldn't be attention drawn. If attention is drawn to your legs, then don't draw attention to your chest. So I was brought up with the rule that you only draw attention to one thing. With my Christian walk, of course, like I said, you can wear your V's, but it's just all a matter of, like how things are displayed, so to speak. Because, and at the end of the day, really and truly, less is more. And I understand, and this is now me just personally talking here. People, society tends to think that more means sexy, and truly more does not mean sexy. Like more revelation does not mean more sexy. It just means more exposed, but it doesn't come out as sexy. It may to some people, but overall, less is best. And like I said, if one area is being drawn attention to, then the other shouldn't. But like I said, this is what I grew up with, what I grew up knowing. But also, like there's a way in which we can show skin without showing too much skin. And especially as Christians, especially as Christian women, we do want to dress in such a way where we are not being too revealing. And trust me, I've had my day. I've had my day of revealing. I'm not going to pretend I haven't. But I know that the best way in which to show up, especially being a representative of God, is to, there's nothing wrong with skin. There's nothing wrong with wearing short sleeves or even a dip back or whatnot, but it's, how it is done. And tasteful is always more. More is, you know, more is best. And so that's just, what I'm recommending on a front as a Christian woman to many Christian women out there, is that there are very fashionable ways in which we can display skin without displaying too much skin. We can have our V-necks, we can have our, necks, we can have all of the short sleeves, dip back, we can have that, but doing it in such a way where it's not revealing too much, because we don't want to go there. And really, less really is not sexy. Actually, more cover, little hint is actually more sexy. So how we dress, the physical, is another. It's self care. Dressing, showing up, nicely put together. I'm not saying, and I mean, we can just, find what your signature is. If it's, formal, casual, formal, there's, figure out, who you are, and just play with clothes, have fun with them, and figure out what your signature is. It isn't about looking left or looking right and looking at the other person and saying that I want what they have, because it may not work. What works for them may not work for you, but you know who you are. And so you develop a style that is right for you. I know this is going to cut off soon. And so just, warning that this is going to cut off soon. But how we dress is something that God also cares very much for. And He does want us to show up our best. And He wants us to develop our own signature. And you know what? You can just pray to God. You can just ask God, hey, what's my signature? Pour it into me. Let me know, like, what is my fashion? What is my style signature? How should I dress? What items are good for me? And trust me, you go out there and you do your thing, or you're looking online, and He will guide you as to what works for you. He will guide you and direct you. Bring God into the mix of your dressing and how you should dress and the things that you should wear. Bring God into it. Even bring God into it. I mean, if you want, even with your makeup. I mean, if you feel comfortable doing that. I mean, if you need to do that, by all means, you can bring God into it. If you don't bring God into that, that's fine too. It's not a sin. But if you feel you need that kind of extra help and that kind of guidance, then do so. And I mean, there are people out there as well. But there's so much literature. There's so much information on makeup, and on styling out there that you can, use to help you in developing, your look and your signature. Even with makeup, how one person wears their makeup and the things that they wear, the colors that they wear, again, may not work for you. Undertones come into play, complexion, face shape, like everything, features. There's so many things that come into play when we're talking about makeup. That what may work for one person may not work for another. So again, even applying makeup and how we apply makeup may differ slightly from face to face. So now I want to talk about physical. I want to talk about body. I want to talk about body and actually like physical activity and caring for the body. And I know it's going to cut off here, and so forgive me. But I'm gonna start with this. So the physical, which is very, very important, how we care for our body at a physical level. And so let me start with food. In the Bible, God does state that we are to do everything in moderation, including how we eat. We are to care for our bodies, things like an excess of alcohol is not good. Sugar is right up there. It is right up there with alcohol. Is another one, and I do love sugar, but it is the absolute truth. These are things. I mean, well, alcohol. The Bible does mention that have a drink for stomach's sake, but having a drink for stomach's sake, in my opinion, probably would be maybe once or twice a week or something. That's what I mean. I don't know, but I'm just saying it would be moderate. I think with sugar, even though it doesn't mention anything in the Bible about sugar, but sugar has absolutely no nutritional value. It has none, like absolutely none. And so the what I was given is that 100 ml of sugar is all you need. And when I'm talking sugar, I'm talking refined sugar. I'm not talking about natural sugars that you find in fruits or various produce out there. I'm not talking about that, but or even certain starches like grains. But I'm talking about refined sugar. 100 mg is more than enough sugar. It has no value, absolutely